Welcome, traveler. You've wandered into the heat tonight, into smoke, sweat, and shadow. I hope you brought something to drink. This won't be a clean story, but it's real, and it's heavy, like iron. Before we start, take a moment. Dim the lights. Turn on a fan for the soft hum, like the whisper of bellows breathing in the dark. If you're watching late, let me know where you're tuning in from. It's always strange and beautiful, imagining all of us together in silence, staring into the glowing heart of the past. Now let me show you what it really meant, to live at the anvil, the blacksmith. In most people's minds, he's a figure of grit and glory, a hammer raised in firelight, sparks flying like some choreographed storm. We've all seen it, slow motion swings, the noble artisan. But step behind the flickering curtain, and it's something else entirely. The forge wasn't a place of artistry. It was a furnace of survival. You weren't born with a hammer in your hand, but it might as well have been there. The first breath you took was laced with coal dust. The first sound you heard was the wheeze of bellows feeding fire. There were no lullabies, only the iron song echoing off stone walls, seeping into your bones. Childhood, as you understand it, did not exist. Not here. By 6, your fingers were already blackened. Tiny, cracked hands gripping tools twice your size. You were your father's apprentice. Though that word sounds almost too clean for what it really was. You didn't learn by being taught. You learned by not dying. Your playground, the dirt floor beside a pit of fire, scattered with nails, tongs, shattered metal. The games? Guess how hot this is, using only your hand. Try not to cry when the nail bends wrong for the 5th time. And of course, hold this hammer until your knuckles feel like stone and your arms beg for mercy they will never receive. Your father. He didn't smile. He didn't speak much either. Just the grunt, the sigh, the bark. Hit it harder. His face was half shadow, half soot. His hands, ancient bark wrapped in leather. His eyes never quite looked at you. They looked through you, into the work, always the work. There was no room for pride, only precision, only endurance. And so you watched. You studied the rhythm. You became the rhythm. Every strike of his hammer, every hiss of quenched steel, every burst of sparks. You felt it before you understood it. This wasn't a craft. It was a language. A brutal, glowing language spoken in burns and blisters and unspoken orders. There were no holidays, no feasts, no breaks. The fire did not rest, so neither could you. Someone in the village always needed something. A horseshoe reforged, a sickle straightened, a chain repaired. You learned that free time was just the space between one command and the next. Even as a child, you understood the laws of the forge, harder than steel, stricter than kings. Don't complain, don't cry, don't stop. By 10, your arms ached with the strength of a man twice your age. You could carry buckets heavier than your dog. Not that he stuck around. The noise, the heat, the shouting, it scared most things away, including joy. And yet, this was your inheritance. This was your blood. There was no gentle moment where you became a blacksmith. No ceremony, no rite. The forge absorbed you gradually, relentlessly, until you were simply part of it. You were the soot on the walls, the burn marks on the table, the tired hiss in your father's voice. Your life was iron, not in the poetic sense. Literally, iron under your nails, in your lungs, scraped across your skin until you forgot what clean ever felt like. You weren't learning to make weapons, not yet. You were learning to endure. Nails. That's where it started. Thousands of them, bent, broken, reheated, over and over, until they were perfect enough to hold up some nobleman's chicken coop. Your reward? Maybe your father didn't curse. Maybe he nodded. That nod, that was worth more than coin. You envied the other village children. Even if they smelled like cheese and goat dung. They played. They ran in fields. They got to be children. You existed inside a fire. You slept with the sound of hammers echoing in your head. And when you woke up, your fingers moved before your thoughts did. Reaching for tongs, flinching from heat that never left. And still, you kept working. By the time you were 13, your spine had already started to curl. Not from age, but from repetition. You stood with the posture of a man decades older. Your knees cracked, your shoulders popped, your arms thickened into tools themselves, not for wielding swords, but for lifting anvils, hauling coal, pouring sweat by the bucket. Your hands no longer felt, not like other people's. The nerves were there, somewhere, but what they learned was numbness. Burn after burn had taught them to ignore pain. What they knew instead was weight, heat, balance. They could read metal the way a priest reads scripture. But still, you were a child, just a child. And sometimes in the quieter hours when the fire burned low and your father's snores rumbled through the walls, you'd catch a moment of something else. The shape of a blade just right. A horseshoe that glowed like a sunset before the plunge. A feeling, fleeting but fierce, that maybe, in this noise and smoke, you meant something. You weren't just making things, you were changing things, bending the world with your hands. Then the bellows groaned again, the fire flared, and the moment disappeared into the flame. Back to work, because in this life, the forge does not wait. The iron does not care, and neither does time. The forge teaches you many things. How to shape, how to endure, but most of all, how to disappear. Not all at once. No, the vanishing happens slowly, in fragments. A splintering of self beneath smoke and repetition. One day you forget what your own voice sounds like when it's not echoing against stone. Another day, you forget what silence feels like, or how grass feels under bare feet, or what it's like to walk away from something, just because you feel like it. Freedom is not part of this life. Your father, a man of few words and fewer affections, never explains anything. Not really, but when he looks at you, with those coal-colored eyes, you start to understand. This work, it isn't about choice, it's about duty. A duty passed down through blisters and blood. Not because it's noble, but because it's necessary. Without a blacksmith, the village doesn't breathe. You fix their plows, their carts, their chains and pots and nails. You sharpen their shears, their axes, their knives. Without you, the farmer doesn't harvest, the hunter doesn't kill, the carpenter can't build. Even the church bell, that echo of God, has your fingerprint in its iron throat. But no one thanks you. No one bows to a blacksmith. No songs are written for men who hammer in the dark. The nobles speak your name only when something breaks. And yet every armored knight who rides through town is dressed in the bones of your labor. His sword, his helm, his stirrups. You made those. You made him. And still, you are invisible. In time, the forge begins to change you. Your lungs grow heavy. Every breath sifts through ash. Every exhale tastes faintly of rust. Your skin darkens not from the sun, but from centuries of soot layered on skin. You stop scrubbing. What's the point? The black always returns. You are the black. You feel it in your bones, the weight of the craft. Not in some poetic sense, literally. Your joints grind when you move. Your knees buckle at the end of long days. Your hands swell and crack. Fingers thicken. Knuckles stiffen. Holding a spoon at supper feels awkward now. It's not the right shape. Not like the hammer. Even your dreams change. You dream in red and orange, of metal bending and breaking and glowing. You wake up with the sound of the forge still in your ears, though the room is cold and quiet. You reach for tongs in your sleep. You call out measurements to no one. Your dreams are loud, smoky things. And when you open your eyes, the smoke is still there. Because the forge never really sleeps. You try to remember your mother's face. It's a blur now. The memory too faint, the fire too bright. You think she might have sung once. Or laughed. You're not sure. She died when you were small. Fever. Cold. Or maybe childbirth. No one ever tells you clearly. The only warmth you've known since then comes from fire, and it burns. So you forge ahead, because there's nothing else. Your father's mood darkens with the years. He gets quieter, harder. His hands tremble when he lifts the heavier tools now, but he never stops. Not until he collapses one winter morning with his head against the anvil, breathing slow, shallow, like a bellows with a tear in its gut. You don't cry. You're not allowed to. That night, he makes you finish the order alone. 30 nails and a hinge for the miller. He sits in a chair, silent, watching. His eyes hollow, haunted, but still sharp. You hammer, knowing that if you falter, the silence will break, and not kindly. The nails come out crooked at first. Your hands are shaking. But you adjust, you breathe, you find the rhythm. And as the metal bends to your will, something inside you clicks into place. Not pride, not joy, something colder, a realization. This will never end. Your father may falter. Your hands may bleed. But the forge will go on. Even if you die, someone else will stand here. Because iron does not grieve. Steel does not pause for pain. The village needs you. The world needs you. But it will never love you. You are the heartbeat of progress. Steady, loud, and entirely ignored. And then, one night the fire burns low, and you look at your reflection in the water bucket. You almost don't recognize the face staring back. The soot, the scars, the cracked lips and blistered cheeks, the shadows beneath your eyes. You look like your father now, not just in the bones, but in the eyes. That tired, watchful stare of a man who knows too much about pain and permanence. You touch your face. The soot comes off in streaks. But the eyes stay the same. And in that moment, you understand what he's been trying to teach you. Not with words, but with silence. This life is not about becoming someone. It's about becoming useful. You are not here to be seen. You are here to make nails, make hinges, make blades, make order in a world constantly falling apart. And when you're gone, the forge will remain. Someone else will take your place. Another boy with a blistered face and iron in his breath. The fire will not remember your name, but the world will carry your work. And so, you sleep, for a few hours maybe, before the embers call again, because the sun is rising, and iron waits for no one. The sun creeps over the hills like an old man rising from bed, slow, stiff, reluctant. And you, same as always, are already awake. The forge calls before the birds, before the market carts rumble past, before the village rooster crows his tired warning to the world. You don't even need an alarm. Your bones are the clock now, and they keep perfect, punishing time. You stoke the fire. Coals black as night shift and breathe beneath your hands. You feed them with bellows, with splinters, with every drop of air you can steal from the cold morning. And slowly, reluctantly, the fire comes alive. Not in a blaze, but in a whisper, like it's deciding whether or not you deserve its warmth today. This is how your days begin, always in smoke, always in silence. The tools greet you like old friends, blunt, battered, familiar in the way only pain can be. You run your fingers along the hammers, the tongs, the chisels. You know their weight, like you know your own breath. Each one has a name, though you never speak them aloud. That would be sentimental, and sentiment is dangerous here. You hear the village stirring, barely. A gate creaks open, a distant cough, someone shouting at a goat. But none of it matters, not until someone steps through your door. And he does. A man, older than most, gray hair tied back in a knot, skin like worn leather, cloak muddied from the road. He carries no weapon, but his boots are the kind knights wear, even if his eyes are anything but noble. He stands in your doorway without speaking, just watching the smoke curl into the rafters. Then, finally, he reaches inside his pack. A sword, broken. The blade snapped jagged at the middle like it tried to survive something it wasn't meant to. You take it from him without a word, weigh it in your hand. The balance is off, the grip worn thin, bloodstains near the guard, dried and cracked. You don't ask what happened. You never do. People bring their stories to the forge in fragments, splinters of battle, betrayal, survival. Your job isn't to know the story, it's to finish it. You set the blade aside. He pays in coin, though you don't look at it. You can feel the weight, enough for a week's meat, or enough to bury a man quietly. Either way, it's more than you expected. He nods once, then leaves, vanishing like smoke into the morning fog. And you are alone again. Just you, the broken blade, and the fire. This is the part no one talks about. The part in between the hammer strikes. The quiet labor of rebuilding. The patience of a man who understands that nothing worth making comes quickly. You study the fracture, feel its edge with your thumb. A blade doesn't just break. It fails. There's a difference. A failure carries weight. A story carved into steel. You read it like a priest reads a confession. A weak weld here, a crack from tension there. This sword wasn't made for war. It was made for ceremony, for parades and empty shows of power. Someone trusted it. It betrayed them. Now it's your job to make it right. You set the forge to rise. You prepare the billet. The broken halves wait on the anvil like a corpse on a stone table. You know what must be done. Heat, fold, weld, quench, shape. It's a ritual, really. Almost sacred. You could do it blind, and yet, you never rush it, because steel is like memory. If you force it, it shatters. As the fire rises, you remember your first real blade. Not a nail, not a hook. A blade. You must have been 15, maybe 16. Your father had fallen ill, fever again, and a local guard came with a demand. A short sword, 2 days. You said yes before your voice was ready. That blade nearly killed you. The edge chipped. The balance was wrong. You cried over it when no one was looking. But the guard never complained. He used it, said it was decent enough. You never forgot that. Not because it was a success, but because it wasn't. You learned then what most men never do, that failure isn't the end. It's the forge. You burn in it. You suffer. You lose pieces of yourself in it. And then, you emerge. Not whole, but sharper. Back in the present, the blade glows orange. You begin the weld. Sparks rise like fireflies in a storm. Your hammer speaks in echoes, each strike a sentence, each clang a promise. You aren't just fixing something, you are remaking it. You draw the steel, stretch it, fold it again. You smell the carbon burning, the iron singing. The room fills with heat until your vision blurs, until your body feels submerged in flame. But you don't stop. You never stop, because this is who you are, not a man, not just, you are the flame, the hammer, the will behind it all. Hours pass, the blade takes shape, and in the stillness between each swing, you think about the man who brought it to you. What did he fight for? What did he lose? Did he kill with it? Did it save him? Or fail him? Will he return to claim it? Or was the delivery just an act of penance, leaving behind the broken past so you could melt it down? Sometimes people do that. Bring you objects that hold ghosts. They never say it, but you know. You feel it in the steel. You smell it in the sweat. Grief has a weight of its own, just like vengeance, just like guilt. But the fire doesn't care. The fire will burn what it's given. So you give it everything. Finally, you quench the blade. A hiss, like breath underwater. The steam rises fast, twisting into the rafters, vanishing into the beams. It's done. The steel gleams, straight and sharp. Whole again. Not perfect. Never perfect. But whole. That's all it needs to be. You set it aside to cool. Outside, dusk begins to fall. The village is quieter now, children's voices distant, a dog barking at shadows. Somewhere a bell rings. Supper or mass or warning. You can't tell anymore. They all sound the same. You sit, just for a moment. The forge is dimmer now, but still warm. You wipe your hands on your apron. Look at your reflection in the blade. It's strange, how steel shows truth better than mirrors. You see the age in your eyes, the soot in your skin, but also the strength, the steadiness, the knowledge that tomorrow the fire will rise again, and so will you, because this is not just labor, This is legacy, and you are its keeper. The seasons turn, though you barely notice. Winter doesn't arrive with snow or song. It creeps in, thin and cruel. The kind of cold that doesn't sting but seeps, curling into your boots, your bones, your lungs. The forge becomes a sanctuary, not just for work, but for warmth. And yet, even here, even with fire roaring, you feel it, the cold inside your hands. They don't move the way they used to. The calluses crack deeper now. Fingernails split. Numbness lingers long after the hammering stops. You hide it. You always hide it. Because weakness here is a luxury you cannot afford, and because your father is still watching. Not always with his eyes. Those have grown cloudy. But with his silence. With the sound of his footsteps pacing behind you, listening to your work like a critic judging a symphony he once composed. He no longer forges, not truly. He shouts less, sighs more, sometimes forgets your name. But when he hears you strike the iron just right, his breath catches. It's the closest you'll ever get to a compliment. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between jobs, you wonder if this is what becoming a man is supposed to feel like. Not triumph, not pride, just momentum. The wheel that turns because it must. The forge that burns because you keep feeding it. And yet, there are moments, rare, fleeting, moments where the work becomes something more. A village girl comes to you with a bundle wrapped in wool. She's no older than 15. Wide eyes, trembling hands. She unwraps it slowly, carefully, like it might break again. A pendant, simple iron, bent into a circle with a small loop, cracked down the middle. Nothing expensive. No crest, no gem. But her hands clutch it like a relic. It was my mother's, she says, barely above a whisper. You take it gently. It's not a challenge. Just a repair, a weld, a polish, a half hour at most. But her eyes say otherwise. You do not speak, you simply nod. She stands there, watching the whole time. You feel her gaze like heat on the back of your neck as you work. When the repair is done, you hand it back, smooth and whole again. She takes it in both hands. And something in her face softens. Something releases. Thank you, she breathes. And then she's gone. You don't charge her. You say nothing. But that night, when the fire is low and your back aches, you remember her. Not because the pendant mattered, but because it did. You begin to understand in that slow, aching way that only the forge teaches. Not everything you make is for war. Not everything forged must be sharp. Sometimes, iron can carry memory, and sometimes that's heavier than any sword. Still, the blades come, always the blades, long ones, short ones, chipped and bloodied. You learn to spot the ones that have killed before. They're heavier somehow, not in metal, in silence. You feel it in the hilt, in the slight curve of the edge, the way the metal resists your hand, like it remembers what it's done. One day, a rider brings you something stranger, a dagger, curved, almost ceremonial. The edge blackened, not from blood, from burning, ritual burning. You ask him where it's from. He only shrugs. East, he says, and then nothing more. He waits while you clean it, sharpen it, rewrap the grip in new leather. His eyes never leave the blade. When it's done, he takes it and vanishes like mist. No name, no thanks. You don't forget it. There's something about that blade that lingers, like the smell of old smoke. You dream of it more than once. In the dream, it speaks, not in words, in fire, but you tell no one. You keep working, because that's what you do. You build the world one piece at a time. Hinges for the baker's door, nails for the inn, hoof picks, wheel bands, locks for a merchant's chest. Every piece stamped in your hand. Everyone with a part of you buried inside. And the armor? Ah, the armor. That is something else entirely. You've made pieces before. A spalder here, a gorget there. But then comes the day when a knight rides in, tall and sure, with coin enough to feed your village for a year. He wants a full suit, custom forged for his body alone. You say yes. Of course you say yes. And so begins the longest task you've ever taken. Days measuring, weeks shaping, months of bending, riveting, fitting. You study his body like a sculptor, measure each angle, each curve. Every piece must move with him, must protect without weight, must breathe without weakness. The breastplate takes weeks alone. Your fingers go numb bending it. You hammer late into the night, long after the village sleeps, the only sound your breath and the ringing of iron over and over and over. But you do it, you finish, and when the night returns, you help him into it, piece by piece. By the end, he stands transformed, no longer a man, a statue, a god of steel. He doesn't thank you, just nods, rides off into fog. You watch him go and wonder, how long will it take for someone to bring that armor back to you in pieces, and will there still be blood inside? You don't ask, you don't hope, you simply turn back to the forge, because there is always more to make, always more to fix. The world breaks faster than you can shape it, but still, you try, because that's the blacksmith's curse and his quiet calling. Years pass, you don't count them anymore. What would be the point? They don't arrive like milestones, they just pile, one atop the next like coal in the bin. You feel them most in your hands, in the way your fingers take longer to close in the morning, in the way your knees betray you when you kneel too fast. You get up slower now, you breathe heavier, but still, you rise, because the fire is always waiting. Your father dies on a cold morning in late autumn. No fanfare, no tears. Just a quiet absence where once there was scowling and steel. He sat by the forge the night before, watching you work. Didn't say a word. Just listened to the iron sing beneath your hammer and nodded once. A small, ghostly movement, barely visible through the smoke. The next morning, he was gone. You find him slumped in the corner, wrapped in the old wool cloak he never let you touch. Eyes closed, hands folded, still calloused. The forge behind him still warm, as if he didn't want to leave it cold. You bury him alone. No priest, no procession. Just a hole dug behind the shop and a stone you hammer into shape with shaking hands. It's not poetic. It's not profound. But it's what you know. Iron and earth, fire and silence. After that, the forge is yours. Truly yours. No more grunts behind your shoulder. No more judgment. But strangely, you miss it. The silence now is different. It echoes. Lonelier. Colder. You talk to the fire sometimes. Not words, just mutterings. Sounds to break the hush. When you were young, the forge felt like a monster you had to obey. Now, it feels more like a partner. Gruff, demanding, loyal. It gives as much as it takes, and it always takes. Your hands are never clean anymore. Not just from soot, but from time. No matter how much you scrub, your skin feels stained with history. Every scar, a page, every burn, a sentence. And the village changes. The boys you grew up with are gray-bearded now. Some gone. Some bent like broken cartwheels. The girls who once smelled of bread and goats are mothers, grandmothers. You pass them in the market and wonder if they remember you. If they see the child who once stole apples or just the man who sharpens their shears. The new ones, the young ones, they come to you wide-eyed looking for blades. Not tools, not hinges. Weapons. You ever killed a man? They ask, trying to sound brave. You don't answer. You just hand them the steel, cold and balanced, and wonder how long before it finds blood. War, they say, is coming. Again. It always is. New lords, new banners. Same hunger, same death. You know the signs. More soldiers pass through now, their armor dull, their eyes duller. You patch their gear. You don't ask why. You don't ask who they'll kill. You just hammer and cool and move on. One day a soldier brings you a child, not his own, he says. Just a boy from a burned village. Quiet, thin, smells like smoke and grief. Teach him, the man says, better than starving. And leaves. The boy doesn't speak. You don't either. You put a broom in his hand. He sweeps. You hand him a pail. He hauls water. You show him how to pump the bellows, how to keep the fire breathing. He watches, learns. Just like you did. He burns himself, cries once, then never again. The cycle begins anew. You don't teach him the way your father did. You don't shout. You don't throw tools. You let him work. You nod when he gets it right. You take the hammer from his hands when his arms shake. You remember what it felt like to be that small, standing in the shadow of fire. Now you are the shadow. Years go by. You forge together, mostly in silence, but not the heavy kind. The working kind. The kind that says more than words ever could. And slowly, you begin to feel not lighter, but less alone. He fixes the roof without being asked. He oils the bellows when you forget. One night, you fall asleep at the anvil. When you wake, there's a blanket over your shoulders and the fire is still burning. You say nothing, but you remember. And you realize, not for the first time, that the forge is not just a place. It is a lineage, passed in soot, in sweat, in silence, and he's ready. You give him his first blade to make, a real one, not a toy, not a test, a weapon for someone who will wield it. His hands shake, just a little. You say nothing, you just nod. He finishes it, imperfect but proud, and when he hands it to you, you feel something shift, not in the blade, but in you. He will carry the fire now, not instead of you, but with you. And maybe, just maybe, when your time comes, he'll put a stone above your grave too. Forged by his own hands, not poetic, not profound, just iron, just memory, just enough. Your shoulders don't lift like they used to. The hammer feels heavier these days, not impossibly so. Just enough to notice, just enough to make you pause between swings. You tell yourself it's nothing, just a cold morning, just a stiff joint. But you know, the forge keeps time differently than people. It doesn't care about your years. It only wants to be fed, to be served. You've given it everything, and now it's asking for the rest. The boy, no, the young man, he works beside you now, not behind. Taller than you remember him becoming. Broader, too. He swings with purpose, eyes steady, arms sure. Sometimes you watch him work, pretending you're just inspecting the shape of a blade. But really, you're remembering, you're comparing, and you see yourself. Not in his face, not in his voice, but in the rhythm, in the way he leans into the heat without flinching, in the way his fingers instinctively check the edge of a newly forged blade. He is not your blood, but he is your fire. You catch yourself sitting more often, resting between tasks, watching, more than doing. You start forgetting the names of customers you've known for decades. Not entirely, just the details. Faces blur, orders mix. Sometimes you reach for a tool and can't remember why. The forge doesn't slow with you. It hisses the same. The steel still screams when it bends. The bellows still groan like beasts as they breathe life into the coals. But something is slipping in you. Not sharply, not all at once. More like smoke escaping through a crack. Thin, silent, inevitable. Your hands betray you for the first time on a late summer afternoon. You're setting a rivet, a simple task. You've done it 10,000 times, but your grip falters and the hammer strikes wrong. Just a bit. Enough to ruin the piece, enough to sting your pride far more than your fingers. You drop the tool and step back, say nothing. The young man notices. He doesn't comment. He quietly sets the metal aside and begins again. His silence is kind. That night you drink, not for celebration, not for warmth, just to feel the burn of something you can still control. You walk the village streets like a ghost. The homes look smaller now. The people, younger. You hear laughter and can't remember the last time you joined in. You see a woman hanging laundry and realize she was a girl when you were already at the forge. Her child waves at you. You don't wave back. What would you even say? The world is changing. Or maybe it's always been this way, and you just hadn't noticed. That's the cruelty of age. Not the pain, not the wear, but the realization that life has continued without needing you to keep pace. You sit beneath the old tree near the river, the same tree you once tied a rope swing to long ago. It's brittle now, hollow in places. You rest your back against it anyway, The bark digs in. Feels good. Real. You wonder, how long do trees remember? When you return to the forge, the young man is still working. He's made a horseshoe. It's clean, balanced. You pick it up and turn it over in your hands. You want to find a flaw, not out of spite, but out of fear. Because if it's perfect, then maybe you're no longer needed. But it's good. You nod. He doesn't smile. He just takes another bar of iron from the stack and begins again. Later that week, a knight arrives. Not a fancy one. No polished silver. No banners. Just a scarred, weather-worn man with dead eyes and a broken sword. You don't ask where he's come from. The smell of war clings to him like smoke. He lays the shattered blade on your table. You made this, he says. You recognize it. Barely. The hilt's yours. The fuller, too. One of your early works, forged back when you still dreamed of glory and craftsmanship. Before the aches. Before the boy. You touch the broken edge. It's jagged. Torn, not cracked. Snapped in a struggle. You wonder who it killed before it died. Can you fix it? The knight asks. You should say no. But you nod. The young man watches as you work. It's not your strongest day. Your arms tire quickly. Your breath shortens. But your hands remember. Every motion, every angle. The blade takes shape again, slowly. It won't be perfect, but it will hold. When it's done, the knight takes it without thanks. But before he leaves, he turns back once. Still the best, he says, not kindly, not softly, just a simple truth. You sit long after he's gone, staring at the empty anvil. The young man places a cup beside you, water, cold. You drink, and then you tell him something you've never said aloud before. Someday they'll come asking for you. He doesn't answer, but you see it in his eyes. The fear, the pride, the understanding. You're not afraid of dying. You're afraid of disappearing, of the forge cooling without someone to tend it. But now, maybe it won't. Maybe you'll linger in the heat of his tools, in the curve of his blades, in the soot that stains his arms the same way it once stained yours. Maybe legacy isn't about names carved in stone. Maybe it's about hammers passed quietly from hand to hand. Winter returns like a slow ache, the kind of cold that doesn't shout, doesn't sting, it seeps. Through the cracks in your bones, through the spaces where muscle once held firm. It's the season of stiff joints and slower steps, of fires lit before sunrise, not for metal, but for the bones of old men who've spent too many decades in smoke. The forge feels quieter this year, not in sound. The bellows still groan, the hammer still sings, but in presence. It no longer roars for you. It waits for the boy, for the man he's becoming. You find yourself waking before dawn and just sitting, not planning the day's work, not sharpening tools, just sitting, listening to the creak of the rafters, the whisper of wind beneath the door, the sound of nothing, a luxury you never knew you missed. Some days your hands tremble, not always, not badly, but enough. Enough that you catch yourself pressing your palms together when no one's looking, trying to steady them. The muscle memory still burns within you, but the body no longer follows like it used to. The strikes are slower, the grip less sure. You catch your apprentice, your successor really, watching you, not with pity, not yet, but with concern. You remember looking at your father the same way. He was the same, strong until suddenly he wasn't. One day his grip failed, and the tongs clattered to the ground. A small thing, but it cracked something open in him, and in you. Now you're here, holding onto the edge of usefulness like a man gripping the side of a sinking boat. You don't say it out loud, but the forge knows. It smells the shift. The fire doesn't greet you the same way anymore. It burns hot, but not for you. It lets you near, but no longer yields. So you teach, not like before. Not with grunts and scowls. Not through silence and thrown tools. You speak now, with words, with care. You show him the hidden things. How to feel the iron with your ears, not just your eyes. How the wrong wind can poison the fire. How to listen to a blade when it cools, and know if it's been born strong or brittle. You tell him how to lie to noblemen who demand too much, and how to patch a cracked mold when you're out of sand and time. You tell him the stories you never thought were worth telling. The times you failed, the times you bled, the time you laughed so hard you dropped a red-hot poker on your foot. He laughs. You realize you haven't heard that sound in years, and for a moment, something inside you softens. Not with weakness, with release. Like a knotted rope, finally letting go. One night, the wind howls so hard the forge doors rattle like bones. You dream of fire, not the forge, a different fire, a wild one, out of control. It chases you across a black field, licking at your heels. You're young in the dream, strong, but you're still running. From what, you don't know. You wake soaked in sweat, breathing hard. The coals in the hearth have died. For the first time in your life, you feel afraid of the cold. The next morning, the young man lights the forge before you do. You walk in, and it's already glowing. Alive. He's already begun shaping a blade. The rhythm is his now. You say nothing, just watch. And then you walk past him, pick up the coal shovel, and tend the fire. A gesture, a habit, a farewell maybe. You both work in silence for a while. No need for words. The metal speaks loud enough. Then, out of nowhere, he asks, "Did you ever want to leave?" The question strikes deeper than steel. You hesitate. "I did," you say finally. "Once." "When?" You shrug. "When I was your age. When I thought there was more than this. When I thought, maybe I could be more than a man who hits things until they obey." "Why didn't you go?" You pause. Look at the forge. At the walls dark with years of smoke. At the cracks in the stone that match the ones in your skin. "Because I realized," you whisper, "that I wasn't trapped. I was chosen. The world needs people who shape things, who endure." The boy nods. He doesn't fully understand yet, but he will. That night, your hands ache so badly you sleep with them in cold water. The pain is sharp, cruel, but you welcome it. It means you're still here, still feeling, still part of the fire, even if it's fading. You catch yourself staring at the stars outside your window. So many of them, so quiet. It reminds you of the forge at midnight, when the last coal dies and the world is still. You wonder how many generations of blacksmiths looked up at those same stars, wondered the same things, lived and died with the same soot in their lungs. And then, from the dark, you hear it, the clang of a hammer. Not yours. His, and it's perfect, not too hard, not too soft, just right. You close your eyes, and for the first time in decades, you rest. Time, like iron, bends, not all at once, slowly, with heat, with pressure, with force so patient it disguises itself as routine. You don't remember when your last full day at the forge happened. It wasn't ceremonial, no trumpet, no farewell. One morning your joints simply refused to obey. Your fingers would not close. Your shoulder wouldn't lift. You stood in the doorway, watching your apprentice, no, your son now in all but name, working the anvil. And you realized you weren't needed anymore. You didn't cry. You didn't curse. You just stepped back. Let the heat move past you. Let the rhythm continue without your hands. You still go out there sometimes. Sit near the door on a stool that creaks more than you do. Watch the fire breathe. The tools dance in someone else's hands. The forge lives on, but it no longer knows your name. Your body is quieter now. The scars have settled into a kind of peace. Your muscles don't ache with promise anymore, only memory. But in the strange way of old blacksmiths, your hands still twitch in your sleep, trying to shape something that no longer exists. You find yourself talking more, to neighbors, to children, even to the goats, who now seem more patient than they ever did when you were young and furious. You tell stories, ones you never thought mattered. The time a blade cracked in two and nearly blinded you. The day a knight begged for a second chance after insulting your work, on his knees, armor and all. The laugh your father let slip once, just once, when you dropped a hammer on your foot and tried not to scream. You talk, because it's the only way to keep the past from vanishing. Because if you don't speak it, who will? The boy listens, sometimes, between tasks, between orders. He pretends not to care, but you see it, the way he leans in slightly, as if the weight of your voice is something he's been craving without knowing why. There's comfort in that, in knowing your life wasn't just smoke and sweat and pain. It meant something. It built something. Not just tools or horseshoes or hinges, but him. One evening, he comes in holding a blade. Not a simple one, a fine piece. Elegant, balanced. The kind of blade you only make when you're no longer proving yourself, but expressing something deeper, like a song. He hands it to you, eyes nervous, voice quiet. What do you think? You hold it in both hands, turning it gently, letting it catch the last light of the setting sun. It's beautiful. Not because it's perfect, though it nearly is, but because you can see him in it. His rhythm, his edge, his fire. You nod, and for the first time in your life, you say the words your father never gave you. I'm proud of you. He looks away quickly, pretends not to care. But you see the breath catch in his chest, the tension loosen in his shoulders. Those words matter. You waited your whole life to say them, and somehow they forge more than any hammer ever could. That night, sleep comes slow. Your body rebels even at rest. But your mind is quieter, your dreams gentler. You dream not of fire or failure, but of rivers. Cool ones, silent ones. The kind that run past villages where no one needs armor or anvils, only time. You begin to notice the seasons more now, not in the way a blacksmith once did, in how heat affects the forge or how wet wood can ruin a handle, but simply for their presence. The color of the trees, the crispness of the wind, the way the light lands differently on stone when the sun begins to shift. You're still not a poet, but you begin to feel like one. And then one morning, something happens. You wake, stretch your legs, and for the first time in years you feel no pain. Not in your back, not in your arms, not in your chest, only lightness. You sit up, curious. You look around, everything is still. Your tools untouched, the forge quiet. You stand, and your joints don't protest. You walk outside barefoot, and the grass feels soft, not cold. Then you hear it, the forge. But it's not the one you know. It's brighter, deeper. The clang of the hammer is slower, almost reverent. There's no rush, no pressure, just rhythm, the steady pulse of a world remaking itself. You follow the sound, not with your feet, with your memory. It leads you not to the old forge, but to something else, a place beyond the village, beyond time, where all the old blacksmiths go when the fire is done and the bellows are quiet, where the heat doesn't burn and the iron doesn't bite, where the work never ends, but you no longer mind. And as you lift the hammer once more, hand steady, heart light, you realize something simple, something quiet. You were never just shaping metal. You were shaping legacy. Time doesn't stop. It doesn't even slow down. But something shifts when the forge no longer needs you, when the heat no longer bites your skin, when the rhythm you once moved in, heartbeat to hammer strike, carries on without you. You begin to feel like a ghost inside your own skin, not all at once. It starts subtly, the way the younger blacksmith calls you master less often and old man more, half joking but not without truth. The way people in the village stop asking for you by name. They come looking for the new one. The way your tools stay cleaner, longer, because no one's using them. And so, you do what ghosts do. You haunt. You linger, not in malice, but in longing. You walk the village more now, past the same fields you never had time to cross when you were young and angry and full of iron. You see the trees that once framed your entire world, but never stopped long enough to admire their shape. You hear the way wind sounds when it dances through empty alleyways, past sleeping dogs and bread carts and children's laughter, and you wonder, was it all worth it? That question follows you, like soot in your lungs. Was it worth the burned hands, the endless blisters, the hours and years and decades fed to the fire like logs into a furnace? Was it worth never leaving? Never seeing the wide world beyond the hills? Never holding anything in your hands that wasn't burning, broken, or waiting to be reshaped? You sit by the well one morning, cold mist curling at your feet like smoke that's forgotten where it came from. And an old woman, older than you by years maybe, sits down beside you. You've never spoken. She used to sell herbs, you think. Maybe still does. She looks at you and says, not unkindly, "You always smelled like fire." You nod. Because what else is there to say? It suited you, she adds. The village was louder when your forge was alive. Louder in a good way. You don't realize you're smiling until she nods and walks away. It suited you. Not praised, not envied, just known, seen. Sometimes that's enough, but sometimes it isn't. One evening you stand at the doorway of the forge and see the boy, now a man, working late. His shirt soaked with sweat, his brow darkened with soot, his jaw clenched just like yours once was. He's shaping a gate hinge, and it's resisting him, bending wrong, singing off key. You know that frustration, that private war between what you imagined and what the metal allows, and without thinking, you step in, not to take over, just to stand behind him. Watch, maybe guide. Too much wrist, you say. He grunts, adjusts, tries again, better. Wait for the glow, not just the color, the sound. It'll hiss when it's ready. He nods, doesn't speak, just listens. The rhythm returns, like a song you forgot you knew, like blood flowing into limbs that had long gone cold. You don't touch the tools. You don't need to. Your voice is enough. And for a brief, silent moment, the forge belongs to both of you. Later he hands you a cup of water and you sip it slowly, the air between you warm, not just from the forge. "Why'd you stay?" he asks, echoing the question from weeks ago. This time it lands differently. Less about restlessness, more about reverence. You look at the coals, the old stones, the cracked walls that somehow still stand. "I think," you say, "because I was afraid that if I stopped moving, the heat would go out, that I'd lose the only thing I ever shaped right." He says nothing for a while. Then, "I think you shaped more than iron." You nod, quietly, and in your chest, something unclenches. That night you sleep like a man unburdened. But sleep doesn't last the way it used to. The older you get, the more the body remembers. The pain in the spine, the knees that bark in protest, the hands that ache even in stillness. But it's no longer punishment, it's inventory, a reminder of where you've been. You spend your mornings carving now, not metal, wood, the soft kind, birch mostly. You sit beneath a tree that leans like you do, and you shape small things. Handles, spoons, little figurines that no one asks for but everyone admires. You give them away to children, to strangers. No payment, no bartering, just quiet gifts from someone with more time than fire. And you talk more. Not out loud, always, but in your mind, to the forge, to your father, to the boy you once were. You think about that boy often, the one with blistered hands and tired eyes, who wanted to run, who stayed, who never stopped. You wonder what he'd think of you now. Not the shape of your body, crooked and weary, but the shape of your soul, still sharp, still warm, still beating against the silence like a hammer waiting for one last strike. And sometimes, at night, you walk past the forge just to listen. It's alive. Not in the same way it once was. Not your rhythm, not your fire, but alive, burning with a new shape, a new voice, one that carries your echo, even if it doesn't speak your name. You don't need to be remembered loudly. That was never the goal. But if the doors stay open, if the fire keeps burning, if the metal still bends, then you were never forgotten. Not really. You became the thing you spent your life shaping. Strong, useful, quiet, and real. You were never the hero of the story. You were the hinge, the nail, the blade that held when it mattered, and maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. The seasons change more quickly now, or maybe you're just noticing them more. The first time frost clings to the anvil in the morning, it startles you. Not because of the cold, but because of what it reminds you of. All those years you never really watched the seasons pass. You endured them, sweated through summers, cursed the wet winters, pushed through every turn of the earth like it was just another thing to be hammered into shape. But now you feel them. The silence that comes with snowfall, the smell of damp wood in spring, the golden ache of autumn light stretched low across the grass. Everything you once worked through now calls for your attention, and you give it freely, because time is the only forge you no longer fight. Sometimes you dream, not of dragons or wars or legends. Those belong to other men. You dream of the shop, of sparks flying, of metal groaning into shape, of your father's back turned, of your own calloused hands striking down with purpose. You dream of the hiss of iron kissing water, of the soft grunt of satisfaction when a tool finally fits its form. In these dreams, you're not old, you're not tired, you're simply doing, creating, becoming. And when you wake, you feel that heat in your chest again. Not pain, not memory, just warmth. The boy, the one who took over your forge, visits you more now. Not out of duty, but out of rhythm. A kind of inherited heartbeat between two people bound by the same ancient ritual. He brings you small things. A polished nail that came out just right. A hinge that sings when it swings. A blade with balance. Thought you'd want to see it, he always says, and you always do. One night you sit with him beside the fire, the real fire, not the forge. A slow-burning hearth where flames speak softer. You tell him about the first time you burned yourself so badly you couldn't hold the hammer for a week. How your father didn't speak to you for days, but left water and food by your cot. You talk about the time the village nearly rioted over a broken plow, and how you fixed it using iron meant for a noble's gate. You laugh even now, thinking about how mad the night was. But the village cheered. You never forgot that sound. He asks you suddenly what it all meant. The work, he says. The heat, the pain. Did it mean something? And you look at him, this man who still smells of ash and sweat, who still carries your rhythm in his bones. And you answer without hesitation. It meant I could shape the world, you say, even if no one knew my name. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The silence is its own kind of how weak. That night when you return to your bed, rough straw, worn wood, the same place you've slept for decades, you feel no fear, just gravity, the weight of everything behind you pressing into the mattress, into your ribs, into your heart, and you let it. Your last thought before sleep is not of iron, not of tools, not even of the forge. It's of a child, barefoot and covered in soot, standing too close to the flame. Not because he was reckless, but because he was hungry. Hungry to shape, hungry to learn, hungry to become something. You smile, because he did. And then, still and silent, you rest. The next morning, the forge door opens. The coals are already smoldering. The hammer rings again, not with your hand, but with your echo. The anvil doesn't miss you. It remembers you. Every dent, every scar, every moment you gave to it. The boy-turned-man doesn't mourn out loud, he simply works. And in that, you are remembered. Not in song, not in scripture, but in the motion of muscle and fire, in the quiet poetry of craft. And that's how the story ends. Not with a grand farewell, but with the sound of iron meeting stone, of heat folding into shape, of something old making way for something new, like a whisper carried in smoke, like the final glow of coal before the dark. You were never meant to be a legend. You were meant to last, and you did. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening, for dimming the lights, for giving this story your breath and stillness. These lives, hard, invisible, almost forgotten, shape the very world we stand on, and in remembering them, in honoring their toil, we keep their fire alive. If this story left something in you, a flicker, a weight, a warmth, let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me who you think about when the coals go dark, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing. Only if it feels right. No pressure, just stay close. There's more history waiting, more lives buried in ash and silence. Until next time. Let the forge rest and let the story linger.